everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. My name is Melanie, and this is a different kind of video. You actually get to see my face, which does not happen very often. This is a collaboration with a bunch of fellow YouTubers where we pulled a Facebook group, namely Love RTS, for answers to some scrapbooking related questions. And the thought was that we would take those responses and each post a video featuring our favorite comments as well as our thoughts on the questions ourselves. I thought to take it a little bit further, and I decided to host a roundtable discussion. I've invited some of my friends to be included in this so that we get a little bit more of a robust discussion than just instead of me just sitting here chatting with you all. So I mentioned the Facebook group was Love RTS. This is a community group that is centered around our love for a fellow YouTuber, RTS Scrapbooking. And it's a great community that is really inspiring and friendly and just a great place to hang out. I will leave a link to the Facebook group below if you guys are interested in checking them out. As I mentioned, it was a fellow YouTuber, RTS Scrapbooking, named Janet, who was the inspiration for that group. Be sure to check out her YouTube channel. She currently is posting on a Patreon actively, but she still has a bunch of videos out on YouTube that you can check out. If you're interested, of course, be sure to check out her Patreon account because she is amazing and it is really inexpensive. It's only $1 a month to subscribe to her Patreon. So be sure to check that out. Okay, so before we get started right into the nitty gritty and talking about the questions, I thought it'd be a good idea to introduce both myself and also have my friends introduce themselves. So first off, my name is Melanie and I have been a scrapbooker since 1992, and I am not going to do the math. It's pretty easy, but I'm not going to do it because I'm a little denial about how long I've been in this hobby, mostly because it also tells you how old I am. So I love scrapbooking. It is by far my most favorite hobby, but I love paper crafting in general. And you'll see that on this YouTube video, as well as any project shares I do over on Instagram. I love paper crafting as far as card making, art journal, and scrapbooking, you name it. I probably have done it at one point in time, but by far scrapbooking is my favorite hobby. Okay, so now it's time to introduce my friends and let them share a little bit about their history in the world of scrapbooking. And if they have any social media accounts that they wish to share, I will also include that in the description below.
Hello, I'm Nikki from Nikki's Scrapbooking Adventures on YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest. I recently started my Pinterest board, so definitely go check that out. I've been scrapbooking for about 2 years, but I actually discovered it back in 2012 when I was in college. So I scrapbooked for about 2 years then, took a break, had a son, scrapbooked a little bit, took a break, and scrapbooked again, and then I started my YouTube journey. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Nikki. And the next up is Kathleen.
So I'm Kathleen Cilla-Choice. I'm not on YouTube. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on any of those things. But anyway, I've been scrapbooking since 1996. So that's about 22 years. I started because I went to a Creative Memories, session and got hooked on it. Had kids at the time and nieces and nephews, and now I do a lot of scrapbooking of my grandkids. So.
And technically now you will be on YouTube, just indirectly.
Yes, I will.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the questions. As I mentioned earlier, they are questions that were posted to a specific Facebook group, namely Love RTS. And I'm going to just read the question. I will also post it on the screen so you can read it. And we'll have a little chit chat about our thoughts as well as thoughts of people in the community. So the first question is, how have the industry changes affected the way you document memories? So right off the bat, one of the first ones that I noticed is the response was from Melissa Johnson. And she talked about how at first it was buy all the different things, right? You know, anything new that came out, we all had to buy it because there was limited options. We were all excited about it. I mean, how many Susie Q, what is it, Susie? What were those stickers? You must know, Kathleen.
Mrs. Grossman.
Oh, Mrs. Grossman stickers. Yes, right.
I still have them.
There you go. So we bought all this stuff, and over time we learned our style, we learned what we liked, what we didn't like, and so we're a little bit more discriminating in our choices. And she says that that's probably more about knowing who we are versus industry, but I'd argue that industry has forced us to be more discriminating. And I guess my question to the two of you is, have you found yourselves being more discriminating in your purchases because of the vast variety of product that's available?
So because I've only been scrapbooking for 2 years, right? I'm in the stage of building my supply, but I also know myself. And if I don't love that product, I will not purchase it. So I am very picky about the product that comes into my inventory, if you call it, if you're a Love RTS fan. And so I only buy things that I'm absolutely in love with, but I love a lot. So that could be a problem too. Kathleen, how has it changed for you?
So my big thing has always been sales. And that's what gets me, because Melanie and I have had this conversation, but if I go to Michael's and the paper pad is down to $1.99 and Michael's is only like a mile up the road from me, I'm buying it, because I kind of look at it, and even if I like 3 sheets, I'm getting it. But, when I heard the question, and maybe this does have to do with how industry has changed, but I think that if you go back to 1996 and I look at what I do now, I do more layering and I do more embellishing, because way back with Creative Memories, it was kind of just cardstock, not a lot of pattern paper, triangles, rectangles. That was it. So, and so I do think that makes us buy more product. And like Nikki, I like all kinds of things. I like bright colors because I got grandkids. I love fall. I have a ton of Christmas. Yeah, I have it all.
So actually, Kathleen, back to your point about layering and embellishments, that's definitely, there's way more options nowadays, right? Like as far as embellishments and stuff go. So I can totally see that in my journey as well, how more dimensional everything has become over the years. So speaking about 1996, Kathleen, you also mentioned Creative Memories, which was how I was introduced. And Amanda posted that Creative Memories was about simple and quick. So way back in the day, it was all about getting your photos documented in a pleasing way, but not necessarily in an overtly creative way, right? And so she mentioned that it's turned more into a creative endeavor, and that perhaps it's a little bit more off-putting or overwhelming for individuals. So Nikki, having come into it a little bit more recently, did you find it overwhelming at first with all of the different options and how creative?
I actually started with a single pad of 12 by 12 paper and base pages with Miss Janet. She inspired me by saying, I just love playing with paper. And I love paper. Like that is the single most item that is in my room that I hoard, which is a later question. But I just want to play with the product. If there's something new, like I just picked up molds for the first time and tried it last night with resin. Somebody had mentioned that zippers, it was was it Elizabeth? No, it was somebody else. Hang on. Melissa Johnson had mentioned CK, which I don't know what CK is.
Creating keepsakes.
Okay. Said starting trying to push zippers on pages. And what's hilarious is I just bought a mold that is zippers that I was going to try to put on a page. So I try everything.
The other thing that I noticed was a few people were talking about how purchasing has changed, right? It used to be that you would go to a local scrapbook store or a party, aka Creative Memories, but now how much of it is online. And I know for myself, I do still have a local scrapbook store, but I do purchase the majority of my stuff online. It's just more readily available, really, that way. And I will admit that there is something lost in purchasing online. You don't get to see and feel and touch the paper like you would if you were in the store. How about you guys? Are you both online shoppers?
I get all the deals online. A cherry on top always has 20% off pre-orders. So I get all the deals online. What about you, Kathleen?
So I'm more online now, but that's because we have no local scrapbook stores anymore here in Northern Virginia. And AC Moore has closed. Years ago there was MJ Designs, they're closed. So I do have a Michael's nearby. Hobby Lobby only came into Northern Virginia, I think maybe 5-10 years ago. Like, it wasn't something that was around. So, but and Tuesday Morning, the one that was down the road from me, that's closed during the pandemic. They didn't survive, so we only have a couple, and they're not that close by. So yeah, so I do more, but I don't like it online because I want to see it.
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, especially a paper pad. So if somebody does a haul video, which unfortunately, you get sucked into those and then you want to go buy it. But when I see the paper, then I go, okay, I want it now. I do think Creative Memories right now, the way you can look at the paper and they show you sheet by sheet, like you're reading a magazine, that is so awesome. If more places would do that. And of course, Photo Play and a couple of those, they'll do a video and show their paper, but I want to see the paper. So
yeah. And it's interesting because I believe Janet talked about too, how some paper has sheen and she doesn't like that sheen on it. And that doesn't translate at all well on the internet. And I've had somewhere I've gotten them like, oh, that's not quite what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm. That and the thickness of the paper. I really appreciate when people go through and tell me, okay, it's 110 pound, or no, this is like 65 pound, like paper thin,
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So the second question is, what inspires you to create? And there were two themes that I picked up on. One was mentioned by, well, actually it was a common theme, was mentioned by Ginger Bush, Sherry Tibbetts, Ruthie Brown, was watching friends and fellow crafters create. So basically on YouTube. And then the other one was Teri, and I know I will not pronounce her last name, Sendayas or Sendajas. Sorry. But she said that she has a need to create. So there's an internal compulsion that just requires her to create. And I totally relate to Teri. I have to create in order to be happy. It's a stress reliever for me. And it's just this thing that if I don't craft, or if I go for long periods of time without being creative, I am very grumpy, irritable, and just not a nice person to be around. So Kathleen, what about you? What inspires you to create?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Ever since I was a little kid, I have always done crafts. I did cross stitch, I did crochet. I used to make candles, I did all these different things. And then when I learned about scrapbooking, it just opened this whole world, because everybody has pictures. And my dad was huge into taking pictures. He was the one who took all the pictures, and he had a drawer full of cameras, So that was just awesome. And putting pictures together for people. I love to give gift albums. I give a ton of gift albums. In fact, next weekend I'm going to a crop, and I'm working on a wedding for a friend of mine I used to work with. Her daughter got married, and she's given me probably 600 photos or something. So
how about you, Nikki?
So my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so I think it's really, really important to keep memories alive. Because we have that history, I know that my memory is not going to be the best. And so I want to make sure to document as much as I can for my kids, so that I can go back and look at the pictures and the journaling and those kinds of things and actually tell them what happened. I don't have a baby book for myself, but I really think it's important that my son has one. So I want to make sure that that's documented. Ginger actually had mentioned that too. She said her father passed away too soon, before all her babies were born, and it makes her sad that there's nothing for her to share with them that's tangible. So it's definitely a common theme when you talk about family too.
So I don't have any children of my own, and often I hear people talk about, I don't know what to scrapbook, right? Like if I don't have children, I don't know what to scrapbook. And to your point, I know my memory's not always going to be so great. Mm-hmm. And I know when my grandmother was in her later years, it was easier for people when they came over to visit to pull out a book of photos and go through them with her and have a conversation with her that was still, I don't know what the right word is. It was an actual conversation versus just sitting there because she didn't remember half the time who the people were in the room, that we could go back in time and talk about, you know, a period that she did remember, and those photos did help to foster that conversation and kept the relationship going, right?
So I have a story that's similar, because my mom passed away from Alzheimer's in 2019, and she'd been diagnosed for 11 years. But for their 50th anniversary, I had put pictures together of all of us, you know, my parents and the kids, and I have 3 brothers and myself, and all our travels. My dad was in the Army. We lived over in Germany and traveled lots of places. And then I had the 50th anniversary. I ended up putting those same pictures, and the same thing. When the caretaker would come to the house, she would always go through the book with my mom. So that book did become something that she, you know, it had their wedding pictures all the way through. And it was something that she did look at and remembered. So
that's really cool. That's really, really cool.
Okay, on a different note, what product, theme, color do you wish you could find more of? So I picked out 2 things. One was boy themed, was very, very prevalent in the chat, and specifically not baby, not sports, and not overly thematic. So a gender overall boy theme paper collection, whatever. So Nikki, you have a little boy. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Oh yeah, I hoard. I gather all of the boy paper because I just can't find it. I want boy paper. And like teenage boys, like right now I'm in the perfect age group because Echo Park keeps coming out with all these little boy collections. But once he hits like past 9 or 10, there's like nothing. They do have a teenage boy collection, but it's for kids my age. Like it's got cassette tapes. That's not gonna be how it is in 10 years when my son is a teenager. They're not gonna know what a cassette tape is or a VHS player or anything like that. So I would love to see a boy collection that is more modern instead of back in the 90s.
I thought about this, right? I was thinking like, what kind of images, what kind of icons would work for a boy theme that's not overly thematic, right? Because you often see like computer games, you know, consoles, that kind of stuff. But what else would be good generic kind of images?
Cell phones.
So technology.
Like that's all they do.
Yeah. Because I think with the feminine side of things, you know, flowers are always like a go-to kind of staple, right? And just work for just about everything. But what would be that kind of generic image? I don't know. I was struggling with that one. I don't know, Kathleen, do you have any ideas?
no, but that was exactly the thing that I said was missing. Is I said masculine, you know, generic, and the same thing. And I said not the golf and the fish. Like I have, you know, 3 brothers. My husband has 4 brothers, so I need lots of masculine birthday cards. And you know, it's like, well, do golf or do fish. Well, no, they don't golf and they don't fish. I mean, why is it when it becomes masculine, it's golf and fish? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, but you know, there's enough people out there in the scrapbooking community. They should be able to come up with something. And maybe it's not just plaids and all. I'm not big on geometrics. Melanie knows that, but there's got to be something. And if they would just put something out there, I think a lot of people would buy it.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, why haven't they? And I'm wondering if they're having the same thing, is that there is no kind of, I don't know. We need masculine florals. I mean, that's really just what it is.
Well, and maybe they do, because, you know, Janet she always says she does not avoid putting florals on, you know, pages that have the men in her life. She does it, but anyway.
Maybe it needs to be darker florals, because all the florals that we get are bright, happy colors. Well, maybe they need to be more of the deeper tones, you know, a dark red or a dark purple. The other thing we could do is stars. Stars is always like the go-to kind of embellishment for me for boys. My husband loves to weight lift. You don't see much of that stuff.
That would be
like he loves wrestling and football, but those are separate themes usually, but they don't have any like WWE stuff out there. It's all like the actual sport of wrestling instead of the fake wrestling.
Well, for the viewers, if you've got any suggestions, leave them in the comments below, because who knows, maybe we'll have to come up with our own line if nobody else is going to, right?
And make millions.
There you go. So another thing was not so much as far as theme goes, but more on the color side, was less pink. So Cody Dahl mentioned that, as well, actually quite a few people mentioned less pink. Now, Kathleen, I know pink is your favorite color.
Yeah, I always say that because I had three brothers. My mom dressed me in pink. I always said pink's a 4-letter word. Yellow is actually my favorite color. I only started wearing it once I let my hair go gray. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I do scrapbook with pink. I mean, people are surprised, but I have, 3 granddaughters, only 1 grandson. So, and, there are women, and I do scrapbook with pink. But yeah, there's a lot of pink. And there's not enough purple.
Yeah, purple's a hard one.
Yeah.
Very few. I think the only designer I know that routinely puts out purple is Paige Evans. I think Chanel kind of, teetered around it every now and then, but she's not designing anymore. So what about colors you'd like to see more of other than purple?
I'm always going to say blue because I love blue. That's my favorite color, but I feel like we don't have enough reds and oranges. If I look at my color stacks of paper, red and orange are the smallest colors. I've got yellow, got green, got blue, but those 2 categories, I don't have very many tone on tone of those.
Do you think red has become so synonymous with Christmas that's why we don't see a lot of, or why we don't have a lot of red in your collection? And the only reason why I mention that is because I don't have a lot of red either. And Kathleen had said, well, maybe it's all in your Christmas collection. So I'm just wondering if maybe that's, manufacturers are going not a lot of red because you think Christmas. I don't know.
I'm not sure, but I feel like they substitute pink for red.
And they've gone coral.
Yes, they've gone coral. That's true. That is true. And we all know that I struggle with coral. I can't decide if it's red, orange, or pink because it depends on the shade. It's somewhere in between. So for me, I was actually just more interested in different color combinations. So I'm kind of done with the pink, teal, and yellow. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty. And I won't say I won't ever buy another collection that has those colors in it, because I probably would. But I just think that there's so many different tones and color combinations out there. It'd be nice to see something a little bit more refreshing. What I did notice in the recent Close to My Heart book, their fall collection actually introduced a dark blue, which I thought was really nice and quite striking. And so, while it still had a lot of traditional fall colors, that blue just felt fresh. So I'd be interested to see more, surprises out there. Surprise me with a new color combination.
Excuse me while I go Google this.
The other thing that I would like to see more of is more florals, but more florals that are, I'm going to call it realistic but artistic. So if you think of the Simple Stories vintage lines, right? The florals in there look real, but they still have an artistic interpretation of them. They're not so whimsical or cutesy. And I think that really fits where I am in my life today, but I don't want photorealistic. Those are my other items that I thought about. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
River. Will somebody do a river collection, please? I do not live on a lake. My family has a boat on the river. That's said my piece. I just want river.
I think someone else in the RTS group mentioned that about a river collection. So that's a good option. So the next question is, who is your favorite designer? And I mean, there was a lot of common themes and no surprise on many of them. 49 and Market is a really big up and coming manufacturer or designer right now. Maggie Holmes is always on everybody's list. Minte is another big one that's pretty popular. Simple Stories came up, Echo Park, that kind of thing. Lacey Root actually mentioned Close to My Heart, so that was quite interesting. And my favorite, which was also mentioned, is Stephen Duncan. I love anything that he puts out. I don't always know what I'm going to do with it, but somehow the collections end up in my shopping cart and I buy them. So what about you guys? Nikki?
I noticed a lot of Becky Bitting, and I like her as a person. I don't like her designs, although the new print shop does look more towards less messy. That's how I describe Becky Bitting. It's just a little messy. She's artistic. That's kind of her deal, right? She hosts these Friday Night Lives to teach people how to do mixed media. That's her deal. It's just not my style. So this print shop looks a little bit more clean, which I'm excited for. So we'll see.
Kathleen, do you have anybody you want to mention?
I really like photo play and I like simple stories. I've not really gotten into the Minte and all because I don't want to do all the fussy cutting. And I don't have a brother scan and cut. Maybe if I got that, I would. But I do think they're gorgeous papers. And I mean, when you see what people do with them, and like you said, 49 in market and all that kind of stuff. But I also I really do like Stephen Duncan's work. And he should do like a Mississippi River collection. Could you see the old boat and all that kind of stuff? Would that not be a beautiful collection? And then that would meet Nikki's need of the river. So
yeah, for sure.
They could do like a steamboat on the Mississippi.
Exactly.
They could, oh man, all the ideas.
Yeah.
The floodgates are opening. So I also found interesting, Jennifer Valentine mentioned that she misses Dear Lizzie, Chamel, and Amy Tan. So those are all three designers that used to be pretty big names in the industry that have kind of faded out. Is there anybody that you guys are missing that, or any manufacturers that you guys are missing that you wish would come back?
I liked Becky Higgins from long ago, and when Creating Keepsake did do stuff, Lisa Bernstein and all, they did some good products.
Yeah. So Becky Higgins went that whole Project Life route, right. And now she's very simplified in her approach. I think she does like more of an editorial kind of story-based thing, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just right. A completely different style. If you lean more on the artistic side, then she's not really targeting that any longer. But yeah, definitely some big names have kind of faded out.
Mine is Chamel. I didn't discover her until recently, and it was after she had already done it, but she had some great boy collections. Like there was like a Grow Up or Never Grow Up collection. Oh my gosh, I hoard that. I never want to use it because I don't want to run out of it, but I want it on my pages so it looks awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so Nikki, you've mentioned a few times the things that you hoard. That is the next question. What product do you hoard? It was interesting. There was a couple of very big themes. One, Anna Blythe, Sharon Harris, Carol Roman, everything. In other words, we have a vast collection of stuff that we don't use. Mary Hansen, Holly Underwood, Marcy Ortega said paper. Some people specifically mentioned specific brands that they hoard or specific collections. And I have to say that I could probably fall under both because I have everything and I have a lot of paper, but I don't know that I necessarily hoard it. I just don't have enough opportunities to scrapbook. You know, I have a 9-to-5 job, or I guess it's not 9 to 5, 6 to 3 job. You know what I mean? Like, I just need more time to scrapbook and then I would use some of it. So in the meantime, it looks like I'm hoarding anyways. And I also have a bigger issue. I just like to buy, right? So it feels like as soon as I use up something, I buy 10 to replace. And so it looks like I have a ton of stuff. But Nikki, yeah, you said you hoard paper. Mm-hmm. And anything else?
Not really. One person had mentioned there's a difference between hoarding and using, right? Like hoarding is if you don't actually use your paper. And I use my paper, but there's some collections definitely that I don't want to use, but I want to use. I'm torn because I want them to last forever, but they also need to go on a page so that I can enjoy them with my photos.
Well, I always try to look at it that when you put it in a scrapbook, it does last forever.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Right? So I do actually, I'm very selective about certain products. The ones that I treasure or value more, or I think are expensive, I will not use on a card because I know the chances are someone's going to toss it out. But if I really, really like something or I spent a lot of money on that embellishment, I will put it in a scrapbook.
That's a good way to think about it and use it too is, okay, I spent $5 on this one thing. I'm not going to put it on a card that's going to get thrown away. I'm going to go put it in a scrapbook and actually enjoy it. It's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. How about you, Kathleen?
Well, yeah, I was going to say define hoarding because, I mean, my first thought was paper is what I have the most of, but that's just because that's also what inspires me. I love paper and I love to keep looking through it. And I made basically all my paper is in page kits. That's what I like to do now. And then sometimes I remake the page kits. I just love it. But, I have a lot of stamps. I did a spreadsheet of all my stamps. So it's about 800 rows. And that's not counting, some of those are sets. So if you figure a set could have 6 stamps. So I have a lot of stamps, but is that hoarding? I use them. I mean, do I use them all? No, I have, since I retired in 2018 and I've gone through my room and I keep going through, I just get rid of, things that I'm not using. I either give them to friends or I donate them to a thrift store and all that. I have a lot of punches, but I love punches. Punches to me are so much easier than dies. I don't want to pull out the machine. I just want to punch. So
yeah. So it really comes down to is something so precious you don't want to use it, kind of as a definition of hoarding, versus having a lot of stuff doesn't mean you're a hoarder.
Well, I think when I first started buying things, I was probably in that boat where there was paper and like you were saying, like, did I really want to, if I used it, I wanted to maybe be on something that it was going to be something I was sort of keeping for myself, or something where I thought the person would really appreciate that I used this expensive paper or something I thought. But sometimes if you keep it too long, then it has no value. It doesn't look pretty anymore. There's some school papers I have now. I still can't get rid of them. And they're preschool through 6th grade. And they're these really cute toppers, but I can't get rid of them. But yet I don't think I'm going to use them. I don't know. It's crazy.
So maybe their purpose is just to give you enjoyment when you look at them.
Well, then it's meeting its purpose.
That's right. That's right. Who says that you can only use paper one way? Okay, so the next question is, what is your favorite go-to technique? And so there were a few common themes again that I picked out. So Ginger Bush, Shannon Strait said base pages. You all know that I love doing base pages and have amassed quite a collection of those. And then Laura Gross mentioned base pages as well, but she also mentioned the 4x4 series, which is a series that Janet puts out where you use 4 pieces of paper to create 4 different layouts. And she has a formula that she, gives us for inspiration. And then you turn around and make your layouts from that. So those were common. And then one that I thought interesting, which feeds back to one of our earlier conversations, Karen Wilson and Paula Green both mentioned texture, that's one of their go-to techniques, meaning rough edges, dimensional embellishments, that kind of stuff. So back to that idea of layering and a lot of different dimension and texture on your pages. Oh, and Lori Hunter and Sherry Tibbetts both mentioned sketches and sketchbooks, which would be my go-to technique for sure. Once I discovered sketches and kind of learned how to use them, I almost always use a sketch now, at least as a jumping off point. That's my go-to. How about you, Nikki?
Sketches, 100%. This binder right here, this one is my layout guide, as I like to call them, because other people say sketches, but I mean, as you can see, it is readily available in between my 2 binders with my photos in it. It is my go-to thing, is sketches.
Do you have a particular style that you like, or a particular person that puts out sketches?
I like the scrapbook.com sketches a lot, because a lot of different designers input their sketches there. And so I get to see a whole bunch of different designers.
How about you, Kathleen?
So I don't tend to use sketches. I sometimes will go look for something, maybe because if I'm trying to do a patriotic layout and I want stars, I'll look for different ways to use stars. But I kind of let the paper tell me what it wants to do. So I kind of create my own. And I've made a lot of base pages, but through the years, I used to make what you would probably call a base album. So I have albums that all the pages are decorated, 8x8, 12x12s, etc. They're just ready for pictures. So sometimes I like to do a whole album. But when I looked at this too, my favorite technique is paper tearing. I paper tear on scrapbook layouts. I paper tear on cards. I love to tear paper.
And do you freehand tear, or do you have like a tearing ruler or anything?
I do both. And I have the old Stampin' Up one.
Oh, I got that one too.
Yep. Because that one has the wider and then the more narrow. So the narrow is kind of nicer on a card, and the bigger, or plus maybe too, whether the paper's thin or thick.
When I think of paper tearing, I'm like, okay, what frustration do I need to get out today? Rip.
That leads into our next question, which is, how would you describe your personal creative style? So for myself, I would say pretty linear. I like the graphic kind of look, but a little bit whimsical, maybe. I don't know. Bright and cheerful, not grungy. Not grungy. You will rarely see me ink an edge or add a splat, like add. It's too much. But I do like mixed media, so I am trying to break out of that kind of clean look. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. What about you, Nikki? How do you describe your style?
Simply embellished. So I will embellish on my page in the 3 mandatory spots that aren't actually mandatory, but I don't usually go over 5 embellishments. Like, it's very simple. I have a hard time layering. I'm trying to get better at it because I love those mixed media layouts that are like an inch thick with all of the things on their paper. But I just really lean towards that simply embellished style. What about you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I like symmetry. So I usually think that it's always a 2-page layout. I only recently in the last couple of years have I accepted that maybe it's okay to have a 1 page and the one next to it doesn't completely match, but they kind of go. But I was always, it's 2 pages. And I was always sort of like, if you did this on this side, you did this on that side. And I think watching Janet's videos, I've kind of learned like, okay, maybe I don't have to be that rigid, but that was always me, symmetry, it balanced it. It needed to be equal. So, but Melanie, I think you don't like, when you don't like the grunge, the dirty, but I think if you inked with colors, you might like it.
Oh, maybe.
Like
maybe.
a pink,
Yep.
a red or blue, but I mean, not just always the browns, because so many people ink with the brown and the black, which does make it look sometimes like maybe it's just, there's a fingerprint.
Right. I think part of it stems back to when I used to sell Stampin' Up, and it was all about, inking the edges around, and I could never get it to look nice. Like, it always just looked, and that's the whole point, right? Like, if you got that random bloop, that's fine, but it would bother me. Do you know what I mean? I'd much rather have a nice crisp edge than this randomness. But I'm learning. I'm never too old to switch things up anyways.
You had mentioned you're a double page scrapbooker, Kathleen. Have you actually ever looked at an album that was like back-to-back single like pages? Like, I wonder what you would think about that.
Well, I have some now because for my grandkids, I maybe only, they'll send me a picture on the phone and, it's only 1 or 2. And so I have adopted, and I'm doing what Janet does too, where I maybe put a filler page in. So
Okay.
so the books that are going to go to them that I'm making for them, they are single pictures. But yeah, it's funny because I was always everything. The only single pages was the title page and the last page.
So when you do these ones for your grandchildren, do you still make sure that the 2 pages coordinate? When
I put them in the album, I don't want to have clashing. I wouldn't put, well, you can't say, I was going to say red and orange, but red and orange sometimes do go together. But I make sure they kind of flow, or I do what Janet says, and now I look at filler pages. Look, all those papers that I used to say, wow, these are pretty, but how am I going to use them? Well, now I'm putting the fillers in.
Yeah. From the Facebook group, there was a few people that were struggling a little bit. So Donna Reynolds said that her style was wanting. So it sounded like she wasn't quite happy with where her style is, that she's still in transition. Laura Gross said that she needed help. So again, I'm not sure if that's more, again, she's in transition trying to figure out what her style is, or if there's some sort of comparison that's going on, right? That she's comparing herself to other people and finding that she's not, that's not what they're achieving, which is really big in this field, right? Especially with YouTube and stuff, that we can compare ourselves and get caught up in that whole comparison, right? And I think the important thing to take away is that my style is not your style. You may like what I do, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly the way that I do it, right? I would definitely encourage people that are struggling, trying to figure out what their style is don't worry about it. If you like it, just do it. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of where I would head. What made me laugh was Chris Brenkeeser. She said she's a hot mess with a T-square ruler.
Which saw that too.
And I'm like, how much of a mess can you get in with a T-square ruler? Anyways, I thought that was funny.
Can we talk about tools for a second?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
T-square ruler, but there's the We Are layer guides. They have like transformed how I can map my photos now. It's amazing. You get your photo on your piece of paper and you cut around so that it's symmetrical on all four sides. It makes my heart so happy that I have perfect mats every time. So they're plastic. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a ridge here.
Yeah.
So your photo sits against this ridge and then you cut along the edge to get the perfect width of your photo mat. It's incredible. I don't know. It's transformed. I used to get so frustrated and peel up my photo every single time to get my mat perfectly centered. And this makes it centered. Do you guys have any tools like that in your inventory that you're like, I cannot live without this tool anymore?
So I had those that you had, and I got rid of them because I never used them. But here's the thing. What's very interesting, I very seldom map my photos.
Oh.
And I just basically, the paper that I use always does that. And it's really funny because my one friend that I always crop with, she always mats her photos maybe once or twice. And then I have another friend that she is a big, and like, she likes lots of embellishments and she likes them thick, and that's not me. But like you said, Melanie, everybody should just do their own style. I think of it more like your scrapbooking styles, like clothing. We all don't wear the same clothes. Yeah. We all don't like the same kind of clothes. Some people are preppy, some are classic, some are bohemian, some are mixtures of that. That's the same thing with scrapbooking.
And some styles just don't look good on you, and you just have to let them go.
Right.
Yeah, very good analogy.
I'm trying to think, do I have what is my one go-to tool?
Mine would just be my paper trimmer. That is my go-to kind of. I will not do without a paper trimmer.
Probably I use this a lot to pick up my adhesive marks.
What paper trimmer do you use, Melanie?
I have 3. I don't know if you can see them. Technically, I have 4 because I have, where is it? I have an itty bitty one.
I have 6, so come on.
This is the very first paper trimmer I ever bought. So this is probably 1992 and it's still sharp as anything, still works. I love this for cutting photos or smaller pieces of paper. For whatever reason, it cuts better than the big one. This is my favorite. It's just a guillotine trimmer. Stampin' Up! Used to have the same one, but they no longer sell it. And I had to buy a new one because I tried to put something through it that should not have gone through it. and I nicked the blade. So I had to buy a new one.
Oh, wait, I had that one from Stampin' Up! And again, I didn't use it, so I got rid of it. This is the guillotine that I have, this guy. But then this is the Creative Memories.
So I like this one too, and I will use it, which is why it's out. What I don't love about this one is that you have to buy these cutting strips. I don't like that. And I love Fiskars, but the way I scrapbook, I was going through blades like there was no tomorrow. So I use that one when I travel because it's nice and compact.
I use this one for photos.
Okay.
The reason I like this one for photos versus the original Creative is because it goes 6. So I can see what I'm cutting it down to. But it's the same. I think these are better for photos.
So Nikki, we all talked about our paper trimmer. So what are you using?
I'm using a Fiskars, like the Creative Memories. It's a rotary blade.
Yeah.
And so it rotates instead of that little itty bitty nub that you use on the other ones. My only complaint of Fiskars is that it's not square. No matter what I do, I've had 3 different trimmers from them. It's never square. So if I could find a trimmer that could be square, I'd be a happy camper. But even guillotine, I feel like you have to get it in the specific spot. Make sure that you move your arm just over specifically to get it square. Just want a square trimmer, please.
So that was a little side tangent. That was not a good one. That was not a scripted question, but very relevant. We all have our favorite tools. But speaking of favorites, what is your favorite topic or event to create about? By far, the most common response was family, right? So Leanne Wagner, Debbie Felton, Inez, Miracle, I'm not sure how to pronounce, I'm sorry. Lacey Root, Jennifer Valentine, all said family. Another common one, Suzanne mentioned vacations. Most interesting one was a different spin from Jeanette Gilbs, was fun stories. So she's got more of a story focus than necessarily a photo focus. So what is your most favorite topic to scrapbook, Kathleen?
So I think it's the same thing, family, but my most favorite album to make is I love when someone's going to have a baby that I know. I make what I call a calendar album, and I start with the month the baby's due. So if the baby's due in October, I start with October and I do a calendar all the way through, and then end with their first birthday. So I give that, and so they can journal, you know, so I kind of do maybe a calendar on one side and a place where they can put photos. And, you know, I usually, you know, if they're born, I mean, whatever day they're born, I have a couple pages up front that they arrive, but, you know, I kind of do the traditional Halloween, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas. So they're kind of capturing those pictures. And there was, I've made tons of those through the years. And one lady that I had worked with, you know, her daughter, their tradition is on her birthday, they always pull out the album and they look at it. And she was not a scrapbooker, and she did it, and she did the journaling, because if the journaling is just one little box, it shouldn't be too intimidating that, you know, at the end of the day, if you just write one little thing and,
right.
You know, so she did do it. She's one person I know who did it, and that's their tradition. I think her daughter is probably a teenager now, but yeah.
How about you, Nikki?
I mean, family. I don't know. I think it's fun. So I really like telling the stories, and you'll see that on my YouTube channel a lot. I focus a lot on stories, or I ask my husband for a title and he comes up with the greatest titles and they're my favorite pages. So I really like the story aspect of it too, though.
Right. Do you do a lot of journaling, or is it like a paragraph or just a couple lines?
Usually a couple lines to tell what happened, what was funny, or anything like that. I almost always handwrite. I like my handwriting, so it's faster for me to handwrite than it is.
I agree with you. Definitely faster for me. The only time I will type stuff out is if I'm going to do like a big trip or something where I've got like extensive journaling, then I will type it. But normally I'm a handwriting person. So speaking of which, my favorite is to do vacations. I love doing those as a book in and of itself. That's my favorite. And I also love scrapbooking beautiful photos. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter what the subject is. If the photo's just beautiful to look at, I love scrapbooking it. So I've got like an album for flowers, and I've got an album for animals. There's no story, there's no reason. They will probably get checked out when I'm old. You know what I mean? But it's just fun for me to take that cool photo, or that photo that I like, and just document it just by making it pretty in a book.
So Melanie, with those pretty photos, do you end up using the word beautiful for all of your titles, or do you use titles of them? Do you journal on them, or is it just photos and embellishments? Like, what do those kind of pages look like?
Yeah, so mostly just photos and embellishments. I don't often put a title on them because they're pretty self-explanatory, you know, and there really isn't a story to tell. So it just is kind of, you know, like I've got some really great pictures of tigers, for instance, you know, where they're roaring and they look like, well, I've got one actually where looks like he's licking his lips like he's going to pounce on me, right? So they're cool, but there's no story, right? Like it's not, I don't have a connection with that animal. It's not like a dog that I own or a pet or something like that. But I managed to capture a picture that I thought was really cool. So But I don't need to put tiger or watch out or, you know what I mean? So it's almost more like they become picture books for my own enjoyment. That's all they are.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is you're documenting your hobby, and your hobby is that you also are a great photographer.
Very true. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Some people, you know, they make quilts too, or maybe somebody they know makes quilts, so they do an album that has all the quilts that have been made. So I think that sometimes that's really fun too, to document a hobby, and or maybe even maybe if your tradition is you always buy a couple of new Christmas ornaments, maybe you have a whole album that's just on the Christmas ornaments, or maybe the ones that people gave you and a picture of it and who gave it to you and why it meant something. So there's so many things that don't have to be people that can be a lot of fun. I think people think outside the box.
Wise words, Kathleen. I've also wanted to do this. I haven't started it yet, but I take a ton of floral pictures. Like, one of my favorite things to do is to go to botanical gardens and stuff. And I live in Southern California, where basically they bloom year round. And so I thought it would be fun to just put famous quotes or favorite quotes with the pretty pictures. Yes. So it becomes an inspirational book as opposed to a scrapbook about my life kind of thing. So haven't done that yet, but it is there, and I got so many photos. I just don't have enough time. It's really what it comes down to.
So are those photo books like 8x8? Are they different size, or are you actually making 12x12 photos?
I've done 12x12 so far. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm single. I have no family that lives with me. And so my rule is I will always find a spot for my albums. Like, if I have to get rid of the dining room table, I will get rid of the dining room table so I can have my photo albums. So I don't worry about size, but there is part of me that says, maybe I should downgrade to a smaller size, just because I'm thinking more when I'm older, right? Yeah, Kathleen's shaking her head. I don't know if you guys can see that, but just so that it's more manageable, right? Like, if you're sitting and just flipping through, an 8x8 album is more manageable from a holding perspective. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm not opposed to doing different sizes. I have done mini albums and stuff. So, we'll see.
If it comes to that, you should just get an adjustable height table so that you can lay your album down and then flip the page.
There you go. But it's just, like, another thing I love doing is printing 12x12 photos, right? Like, and there's something when you're flipping through an album and you come across a 12x12 photo that's just so striking. And you see way more details, right? But I've also done 2x2 photos. So, I just love variety. Let's just say that, right? I just love everything.
What was the last travel album you finished with the 12x12 photos? What was that trip? The Panama?
It was my South America trip.
Yeah, those were gorgeous.
So, and I used them as a delineation between each day that we were on the ship. So, kind of as a marker. So, speaking of not having enough time, the next question. So, what time of day do you feel most creative? A lot of people surprisingly said morning, but that they just couldn't fit it in, right? Because, morning, you're getting up, you're getting the day started. Most of us have to go to work, that kind of thing. That was quite common. There was a few people that said nighttime, which lucky them, right? Because it fits in with most schedules. And Natalie Archer mentioned something that was very interesting. She said, depends on mood and time. So she doesn't feel creative unless the circumstances are correct or aligned, I guess, in order to feel creative, which was interesting. Kathleen, when are you most creative?
It's morning.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate that I'm retired now, so the mornings are available to me. So, yep.
Do you have a routine? Like, you get up in the morning, straight to your craft room, or do you, first have breakfast and go for a walk and then?
So I get up in the morning, I go get my coffee, and I go back into the bed and I pull up my little Surface and I watch my YouTube videos. While I drink my coffee, I check my email, and that's what I do every morning. And depending on how many I either am subscribed to that have just come in, or what I want to watch, or I watch later, And then when I exercise, I watch YouTube videos. So that's what I do. And so it's somewhere after that then I'll come and, maybe I have to clean up or put away or anything like that.
Right.
But, if I go to a crop for the weekend, like I'm going next weekend, I mean, I won't be staying the night. It's close enough. I'm going to come home. But when I've gone and stayed at a hotel, I'm one of those people that I'm there at 8 a.m, but I'm up until 3 a.m. too. So if I go to a crop, I am working nonstop and I'm taking every hour there is.
So in that case, it's the atmosphere that triggers the creativity for you.
Well, and I really plan. So like usually if I go away for a 3-day crop, I pick a huge project to work on. So like for next weekend, the friend that I'm going to do the wedding album of her daughter. So that's what I'm going to start planning out tomorrow, is all the pictures and sorting them and putting them with page kits and putting all the embellishments. So I'm just going to go and do page after page after page.
So and also I guess momentum is probably also a significant factor, right? Once you get the ball rolling, it's easier to keep going with it.
Yeah, I think I told you the story, but there was a gentleman I worked with, and unfortunately his wife passed away. She was only in her 30s and their daughter was 9. Anyway, I told him, I said, if you give me pictures that you have of your daughter with her mother, whatever, I'll put them in an album. It ended up being a 60-page album I made. And it was really cool because he brought me all the pictures, and like there was some merry-go-round like they went to, but I could just tell by the clothes they were wearing, and age, like these were for 1 year. It was like I had 4 years. I did it on a 2-page spread. So I had the merry-go-round, the 4 different occasions. But anyway, she wrote me the sweetest thank you. And he also told me that she takes that album to therapy. So,
wow.
So that was a few years ago, but like that is like probably the album I'm most proud of, that I did that. And I mean, and so she lost her mom. She was only 9, but she has this book now of all these pictures. And I know from the pictures how loved that little girl was. And so she knows that too now.
How about you, Nikki?
You're gonna make me cry. That's amazing that all of your albums that you've made for other people have been cherished. That is absolutely incredible. When I've made albums for other people, they're like, oh, thank you. And then I have no idea if they did things with them. But anyway, back to the question about motivation and timing. I am a morning person. So if I can get things done in the morning, that is the best. However, I do have a job. So, and I work at 7 a.m. I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. to squeeze in 30 minutes of scrapbooking. That's just not happening. I like my sleep too much. So it ends up happening after work, about probably 5 o'clock to probably 10 p.m. So evening times is when I can squeeze it in. I would love it to be mornings, but I have a job.
Yeah, those pesky jobs.
And a kid.
Yeah. So I'm also a morning person. I would definitely be more productive in the morning, but similar. I'm still working, not quite yet retired, getting closer, but not quite yet. But I feel like I'm creative all day. Like I'm always thinking, even at work, sometimes I'll be doing something and it'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that, or, whatever project I left the night before is still rolling through my head today, right? The only time I'm really not creative is if work is very stressful, which is interesting because I use creating as an anti-stress tool. But if it's like there's a breaking point, when it becomes too stressful, it's like my brain can't function anymore. And if I'm really tired. So sometimes on my monthly Zooms, if it's been a particularly trying week, I get on there and I'm like, yeah. The creativity is not going to happen today. But even then, I still tend to do something creative, whether it's not necessarily like artistic creative, but I'll be playing with my craft supplies, organizing them or doing something, right? Because, that need, right? That need to be creative is always right there. So speaking about ideas, do you write down any ideas that pop up? Do you keep track of them? Do you sketch them out? Like, how do you keep those pops of, brilliance, forefront and ready to access whenever you need to? Kathleen?
So, you were talking about at work and you're always thinking about creative. When I was working, I used to often sketch card ideas or layouts or something. So yeah, I'm always making my own sketches is what I used to do. And I, have paper by the side of my bed. If I think about something in the middle of the night, I'll scribble it down. But I have a ton of spreadsheets and Word documents that have monthly goals and all the things I want to do. So yeah, I have a list of all the gifts I want to do, things I want to do for myself. I always tend to put myself last, but I think it's a 3-page Word document.
3 pages.
Yep.
Wow. I think I'm afraid to put my stuff down on paper to find out how much I have to do or want to do.
It's fun to cross it off when you're done.
It sure is. It sure is. How about you, Nikki?
I have a scrappy notebook. So I talked about this on my YouTube channel probably a couple weeks ago. I love my Happy Planner notebook. It makes this so easy to just jot it down. I've got a pencil holder right there if I need to write down my stuff. I cannot go to bed with an unfinished project. So if I've started something, it needs to be finished. I will not go to bed until it's done.
Wow.
So I always have a clean desk when I'm done too, because I can't function the next day if it's dirty. So just a little tidbit about me.
I don't actually write a lot of stuff down. Surprisingly, I would have thought that I would, because I'm usually a list taker, but I don't. Now I do use things like Pinterest, right? So when I come across inspiration, I will pin. So I do use that, and I will go back and flip through it occasionally if I'm, in one of those creative ruts where you want to be creative, but you just don't know how to start. But mostly I just wing it, and I hope to remember. And I guess if I forget, then I don't know that I forgot, right? So it is what it is.
But Melanie, when you go on your trips, you take something with you to record what happens.
Yeah. So when I go on the cruise trips, primarily because you have days at sea, I always take a scrap, like a journal of some sort and some scrapbooking supplies so that I can journal in the moment. I love that because I'm not a big journaler normally, right? I'm a very much who, what, where, when kind of person. So if I have to do the journaling post trip, that's literally all you would get. We went to here today. The guide was nice. You know what I mean? But if I can do it in the moment, I'm much more effusive with my words, right? I will be much more expressive. So that is something I have done, and I've loved them. Like they are a great complement to the scrapbook that I do. I don't transfer the journaling into my scrapbook pages. I use it as like an addendum or a secondary thing to be used in conjunction with my scrapbooks. But I don't know, like if I was just doing a regular trip where you're going somewhere every day and I didn't have any downtime, I don't know if I'd be able to keep it up, right? The cruise works because of the days at sea. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found this type of video inspiring. I know I just love this hobby so much. I could talk about it all the time. And I'm sure many of you are the same. Be sure to check out the other collaborators to find out what their thoughts are. And don't be afraid to share your comments below as to what your answers would be to any or all of the questions. Or if you'd like to continue on with the conversation, by all means, you can join my Facebook group. Link is below. I'll post it here on the screen. There'll be a post accompanying this video. So if you want to leave some comments there, we can have a more interactive experience over there rather than in YouTube land. All the links we talked about in the video, like Love RTS Facebook group, Nikki's channel that I can link to, I will include in the description below as well. And I think that is it. Thanks again so much for hanging out with me. I do appreciate it. And until next time, happy scrapbooking.